Hi all, I have another interesting game to show you from the Olympiad. Another game of Magnus Carlsen actually. In round 8, Norway were playing Peru. Magnus was up against Emilio Cordova, who was actually 2-6-3-8, very high rated. So some information about Cordova. Emilio Cordova is only 25 years old actually. He became a FIDE master in 2001 and a grandmaster in 2008. So let's have a look at this fascinating game. D4 from Magnus. We have knight f6, c4, e6. Magnus chooses to go into Queen's Indian territory. So b6, Queen's Indian defense, fianchetto variation, and okay, standard position here. And usually black in this position plays knight e4. Other moves don't fare so well. They seem to end up with white having a good space advantage. There's a strategic risk already of this bishop being blunted, for example. So if black played d6, then d5 is actually pretty good, even though it might weaken c5. White's got things like f5 to play with, and white's better here, for example, if black has to create some weaknesses. So the usual treatment here is actually to play, in this position, knight e4, which threatens to double the pawns, discourages d5. And quite often white plays this next move, which you might think is a bit odd, offering the dark square bishop. But in this structure, it seems as though this bishop isn't the most amazing piece in the world in this particular structure, and white doesn't really mind if black did take there. Just to show also, just from a theoretical angle, if d5, yeah, this is very good for black. A nice blockade can be set up here. The double pawns are a problem. Black would be at least equal. So, okay, pardon me. So we'll go back to this position. So knight e4. We have bishop d2. So very theoretical position to start off with. Bishop f6. Now we have rook c1. Now c5, putting pressure on d4. d5. E takes. C takes. And now black does take that bishop on d2. Knight takes d2, supporting d5 now as well. So we have d6. Now knight d e4. And actually this position, it looks fairly pleasant for white, but there can be some dangers on the dark squares. Black has that dark square bishop trump card. White has relinquished his own dark square bishop. And black keeps it for a moment on the board with bishop e7. We see f4. And clearly it looks really dangerous to play things like f5 here with f6 to follow. So black actually blocks that with f5. And this has occurred before, at least in one high level game, Vadim against Bernard in 2011, which ended up in a draw. So black has played this before. There have been other tries as well in this position. For example, knight d7, g4, a6, g5, and white's actually done quite well from this position. In fact, it seems as though white has a space advantage on the king side, even though black's got that dark square bishop. White's definitely got some interesting prospects here. So anyway, f5, it has been seen before. Knight f2. And white would perhaps like now to play e4. Black plays bishop a6, which of course discourages e4 for the moment. And at least this next plan, a4, would seem to obstruct the bishop with knight b5 as well, as potentially playing for e4. Bishop f6. We have now rook e1. Knight d7. And you see that this bishop, yeah, hasn't got a counterpart. And in fact, Magnus is keen not to amplify or make this bishop more effective than it needs to be. He doesn't actually play e4 here. This is a really interesting prophylaxis type move. E3 is played. It prevents all the bishop d4 stuff for the moment, in fact, as well. If he rushes to play e4, then maybe bishop d4 is actually an annoying pin. For example, like this, black's got some play. Even if he sacks d6, he'll end up getting some play, for example, like this line. It just shows it's quite dangerous. The bishop coming to d4 can be quite dangerous. There's a lot of tactical possibilities that could be introduced. It's all cut out for the moment, e3. Just say, okay, I'm going to prepare things a bit better before I play e4. We have rook b8. And now queen c2 looks at the f5 pawn, encouraging black to weaken his king a bit. That is a real problem here and a real downside for black. That pawn is quite exposed. It's protected. Now knight b5 blunting the bishop and hitting a7 and d6. So there isn't actually too much choice here about this fork. Now we have bishop takes b5, giving up the light square bishop. So yeah, we have the light square bishop versus the dark square bishop. Basically, they both haven't got their counterparts here. So who will win this scenario? Interesting. White's also clamped down on interesting light squares over here as well. Double pawns, sure, but yeah, quite aggressive pawns here, marking out key squares on light squares. Bishop g7. Now the light square strategy is pursued here with bishop h3, actually. Trying to make sure that e4 is given more effect. It will break open this bishop to e6. We have king h8 trying to get out of the way of any checks there. And now e4 not minding bishop d4 anymore. But black plays a very good move, in my view, to try and generate dark square counterplay in this particular position. Great response here. g5, just trying to soften white on the dark squares. Great response. We see f takes. To show that white can easily quite crumble with inaccurate play on the dark squares. Say e5 takes e6, knight e5. Yeah, black's getting good squares and can even do stuff like this if white's really playing recklessly, which he wouldn't do. But no, the dark squares would be compromised. So we see after this, f takes g. Yeah, Magnus has got double pawns on both sides of the board now. Structurally, it looks a bit odd. And yeah, black activates the rook. He doesn't want to take that anyway. He wants to activate his rook, which he does. And now we have bishop f5. The queen, sorry, can't take on g5 anyway because of d7 in most cases. Pardon me. Here, by the way, in this position, and we have the position after bishop f5. F takes g3. Knight h3 holding the g5 pawn. If white had played h takes g3, then you can see that black's dark square play is a little bit like Benoni's system, and it's quite aggressive. So after bishop e5, yeah, white's looking defensive now. That would be slightly better for black. So yeah, Magnus's move is very careful. He plays knight h3 here. We have taking. Now just moves his king. He doesn't really want to take, because again, black's dark square play, I think, is slightly more pronounced if white is taking that pawn after bishop d4. This is interesting for black. So actually, yeah, by playing like this, the queen come and collect, and maybe with interest hitting d6 as well. We have bishop e5 protecting that pawn for the moment. Queen e2. So the queen's got ambitions to come to h5. Rook f7. And now rook c2, actually not playing queen h5. There's no point now because this has been parried in advance. But rook c2 means that the rook can come to g2 later, switching across quite elegantly. Rook g7, rook f1. There's no point again going to h5 here. If queen h5, knight f8, black's holding the position together, it seems. So yeah, we have, in fact, in this position we have rook f1, queen e8, which now prevents queen h5, of course, queen d3, knight f8, rook g2, knight g6. Now actually Magnus snaps that off because he wants to get in knight f4. So in fact both the bishops are coming off now because knight e6 is too powerful. It would be too centralized, too dangerous to allow this knight to live on anywhere. You know, it's just horrible, absolutely horrible, because things like knight e6, we've got that protected, so that's horrible. That's winning the exchange, and there's no point even thinking about this position. It's just grim after rook f5. So yeah, black really should give up, and he does give up the dark square bishop. Queen h5, and technically black's fine. He's got equality according to the engines. He's absolutely done all the right stuff, really, all the right stuff. Queen c3. Okay, not minding the check, but you know, pinning the rook, and the queen can come into f6. King g8 unpinning. Now this was an opportunity for black's queen to be a total menace, nuisance actually, with queen d1 check. This position, let white take the pawn, come back, and say check here. The point is here, if white retreats the rook, queen a4 hits b5 and e4. I know this is looking absurd to have a queen on a4, but what does white do here? What does white do apart from e5? If he plays rook e1, rook e8, black's gonna be equal, because the point is these checks are gonna be perpetual a lot of the time. Yeah, so this position is actually quite interesting for black if he wanted to just equalize. And say white doesn't protect and just goes with e5. Again, we've got a nuisance scenario here coming up. Okay, that was hitting the rook, but say black takes time to defend everything there. This scenario, what is happening here? Say this check. We've got the checks. It's annoying. It's about equal. What is white actually doing here? There's also the possibility, of course, of queen d4 check coming up, which would weaken g5. G5 would look really weak. So yeah, it was an opportunity, it seems a missed opportunity, to play queen d1 check here. So anyway, king g8 does have a logic that it unpins queen f6, but this is a nasty grip, it seems, on that f file. Rook f7, which really is a mistake. Rook f7, it seems maybe natural to threaten, but it goes into a horrible pin after queen e6. I mean, this is worse than the other pin by far, this pin here after queen e6. Black should have played something like queen g6, it seems. So say this position here, like this, black is doing well here technically, and might even be better slightly, might even be better, because this pawn is a bit vulnerable. Yeah, it's nasty to go into this kind of very unfortunate situation now with queen e6 at move 38, approaching move 14, like time control. Maybe it's like short of time, but yeah, this is really nasty because, yep, this position here, is just really dangerous now for black. Very, very dangerous. What does black do, in fact? The immediate concern, well, it's unveiled anyway. After c4, can you see what Magnus plays at move 40, which is a real bone-crushing move in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, white to play here, what would you play with white? Okay, just g6 actually, blocking the queen from protecting f7. So if h, we just snap f7, and if queen takes, then we just play rook g2, winning the queen. Yeah, it's really gone terribly bad for black in just the very last moves. Check was played, and here black resigned. Yeah, he crumbled towards move 40 basically. He had an opportunity there to try and at least get a draw from this game. You know, he played all the right stuff with black. Yeah, it was good stuff with black. Very good dark square counterplay to an extent. The queen could have been a real nuisance, but it's difficult for humans to think about queen a4 as a decent idea because it's got central influence. Even though it's offside in that line, it's actually got some central influence and can still carry on being a nuisance in many lines. So there was an opportunity for that check, which was missed. There was an opportunity later for queen g6. This very, very nasty pin was just devastating. Then all the pressure was put on f7, and then the interruption tactic, very decisive tactic, that interruption tactic, and also combined with a drag and drop in a way, putting the queen there, dragging and drop the queen there, so we can just pin it to the king. Yeah, crushing in the end, but yeah, black had chances for sure. Very interesting game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.